Well, hello and welcome to the second episode in our little DTH mini review series where we have yet another indie game to do. Quickly, we should clarify that this isn't a permanent weekly basis thing. We won't always be chucking out 2 videos a week. We just had a kind of a small period where we were lucky. A couple of developers were nice enough to give us some codes. Do you want to give another shout out to this company? I can't remember.
This was Starbreeze and 505 Games got us a code.
Yeah, nice. What nice guys. So we'll just, as I was saying, this isn't a weekly thing. We just had a lucky spree where some developers were kind enough to let us try out their games. So let's kick off with Brothers. Let me give the lowdown because not quite a few people might not know what it is. It's kind of it's an action, well, not an action game at all. I'd say it's an adventure game involving 2 brothers on a quest to heal their dad. And I think the main thing to talk about is the controls. The things that is original about the game is that you control both brothers at once. You have to use an Xbox controller, am I right? Even if you're on PC. So each analog stick controls a brother. The left analog stick is the bigger brother. Not that it matters, but I think that's how it's done. And each trigger is the action button for each brother. So what did you think about it? How did it control for you? Because it's a pretty original, I think.
The controls are very original and very unique. But because of that, I found it really difficult to control a lot of the times. Not that the controls are complicated or that any of it is difficult. It's just hard to keep track mentally of which thumb and finger control which brother and where they are on screen. Like every minute or so, I would have them running in opposite directions and running into walls because I had crossed the streams, well. Basically. You know, like the the little brother who's controlled by my right hand was on the left hand side of the screen, and I was just like, oh shit, I don't know what is going on anymore. And it got frustrating several times. I found. But a lot of that is just due to it being like completely unlike anything else I've played before. But it did lead to some frustration. But it's a very interesting way of playing a game. I
agree. Like I believe, like as you said, like you have whichever brother's controlled with the right analog stick, you have him on the right, and then you have him the left controlled brother on the left. I'm even struggling to say it.
And if they switch sides,
God, your brain cannot handle it, and they just end up both walking into walls, and yeah. But I think the payoff, I think overall it's worth it. The fact that you control both of them at the same time. And I kind of thought that the game is going to go down this path where it involves a lot of puzzling. But it really doesn't. They're not really puzzles. They're more of coordination tasks, if that makes any sense. Which is more about how well you can control both the brothers at the same time, doing different tasks at the same time. It's not really... I was hoping for some puzzles, because I think they could have done some pretty original stuff. And there were a few... Like, it's quite harsh saying there's no puzzles. There were some puzzle elements, but it was kind of more testing your coordination of how you can control both of them at the same time when it came to these parts of the game.
And I'm kind of glad that they didn't do anything much more than that, because I would need like another 20 hours to master those controls. I really liked the part where you were swinging with the 2 brothers where they're tied together by rope. That was probably the most elegant.
That's really cool.
Where with the controls, you know, you finally were in the rhythm, and it's like, yes, it's clicking now. I finally got it. I figured it out. Yeah.
I think the only part that I found I just couldn't figure out was when you used both brothers to carry an object. So you had one brother at the front and one brother at the back. I just couldn't quite get it. I kept like walking into walls or like just spinning around in circles. So eventually I just let the brother at the back drop it, and the guy at the front would just drag it slowly. So. Oh,
weird. Yeah. The hardest parts for me were just the walking around bits. Whenever they would switch sides or I'd lose track of one of them is when any problems would arise. But for the most part, I found like any of that working together between the 2 of them to be pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's commendable.
They do some really neat stuff also near the end of the game with the controls, let's say.
Yeah. I think they should just be commended for trying something different. So most of the time,
totally, yeah, and it's a neat and interesting way of playing a game, and it's a little frustrating at times, but. It's cool nonetheless. It's cool that somebody's trying something new.
How did it look? Because you played it on PC, right? So I'm sure. What did you think of the presentation?
Oh, man. It's like one of the best looking games I've ever played, I think. And that's due like pretty much 100% due to its artwork. It's got fantastic artwork. I mean, the benefits of the PC, obviously, you know, you can crank up the image quality and get it like razor sharp, but the art is fantastic.
Yeah, it looked good. It still looks good.
It looks incredible. I'm not a huge fan of how the characters look. They sort of look out of place, like with the world. I found the world is really nice, sort of like painting looking almost, and the characters are a little like modern cartoony for this sort of old looking world, but it looks fantastic. The visual, like the vistas and the environments are, it starts off looking good and it just gets better and better up until the last couple, like the last hour and a half is just, it's gorgeous. You know?
I like the benches that they put in the game that you can sit on, because to me it felt like a statement where they were like, our game is really pretty, so sit down and just look at it. that's what it felt like to me.
You should just stop every once in a while and look around, because it really looks incredible. I was really surprised by how great it looked.
And one thing I wasn't expecting was it's hard to say story, but it was more of the emotional journey it takes you on. At the beginning there was no dialogue, and purposely they have this it almost sounds a bit like Japanese, but I think it's kind of supposed to be like, you know, when the Sims talk when you're playing the Sims. It's kind of like it's gibberish basically.
It's gibberish. Yeah.
So you can't. There's no dialogue. It's all. I don't know how you would explain it. It's the whole story is played through actions, and you have to kind of
and through visuals. It's sort of like a silent movie almost, where like they exaggerate all their body movements to explain what's going on in the story. I found
it works really well, and I was
lots of like really exaggerated like pointing, and you know, but they get a lot of stuff out of like the music, which is really really good, by the way. The music and just like the character movement is pretty much where all the story is told through. You know?
I was not expecting to go on such an emotional journey.
And you're right, there's not a lot of story. It's almost just like emotions throughout the game, sort of.
I was very surprised by like how affected I was. I think like in a moment I'd like to bring up a little spoiler section, because there's one bit I really want to talk about. But let's just say spoiler free. It takes you on a journey. I think that's the best way I can describe it.
Yeah, and it's a little bit darker than I was expecting as well, you know.
Yeah, it is not a kid's game, which I thought it was.
Yeah, they deal with death really interestingly, you know. Spoilers! Don't watch!
This is your spoiler warning. We're just going to talk about specifically the ending. So I recommend, if you haven't played the game, that you use your annotation to skip past it. Okay, so obviously... quickly, I mentioned before, the one scene that stuck out for me was the graveyard scene. The giant
giants,
graveyard. Yeah, that was very surprising in the way where...
Well, yeah.
When you started chopping off their limbs, their giant limbs, and you started shooting arrows into their corpses, that was, let's say a change of pace. Because your mind was not really ready for anything that was not PG-13.
That's sort of where it started. You were like, oh, this game is a lot darker than I thought it was.
Yeah, blood, waterfalls, etc. Yeah. So let's jump into the ending where you're in a spider boss, and then the older brother takes a fatal wound from a spider, which was very surprising. I did not see that coming. I was like, yeah, my jaw hit the floor. And then it carries on, and the older brother's wounded, and the little brother's carrying him. And then you continue, and then you get to the Tree of Life. And I was like, oh wow, well that's a coincidence, you know. Your brother's dying, and you found the Tree of Life. Well, that couldn't have gone any better.
The Tree of Life from Avatar, but it looks exactly like it.
And then the game completely shocked me, where like you go and get the health potion, and you're like, oh, we're gonna go fix the brother. It's gonna be happy ever after. And then he just dies.
Yeah.
I did not see that coming. I was not expecting it in the slightest, and I always commend the game for catching me off guard. And I was a bit too cocky, and I thought I'd sussed it out, and it completely surprised me.
Yeah, and then they do the really neat stuff with the controls, where it feels really weird just like using only the right half of the controller when you're heading back home.
Yeah.
And then when you get sort of channel his power with the left half of the controller, that was really neat as well. I thought that was really cool.
And when the bastards make you bury him.
Oh my god.
Jesus.
Yeah, that was brutal. I was like, oh, they're just gonna you're gonna make me do this right to the end.
God, the sorrow. That was one of the darkest scenes in a video game I've played in a long time. I don't think I've ever buried my brother in a video game before, so that was original. Well, I think that's all we really want to say about the game without going too much into it. It's a uniquely controlled game. It looks really good. It's got some very impressive scenery in it, and it takes you on a really good journey. And it's brings out some emotions in you, and it's got a subtle story. So
yeah, every year has one good Xbox Live Arcade game, and this was this year's.
Yeah, it was excellent. It's definitely, as you said, it's the must-play Xbox Live game I've played this year anyway.
Yeah.
For my ratings, I give it a strong 4-star.
Boom. I like it. I agree. It does really good stuff with story and visuals and unique things with the controls, but I found it frustrating on more than a few occasions, and that's not really saying that the controls are bad. It's just they're just new and tough to wrap your head around, and it's sort of having to restart checkpoints really kills momentum. Let's say. But yeah, it's a cool game.
Yeah, it is good.